Okay, so hola. Today we're going to do a review of los verbos reflexivos, reflexive verbs, which you likely did in middle school and hopefully also saw last year in Spanish too. Keep in mind, there are a couple of spots in which you'll be asked to pause and do a conjugation, but for the most part, this should be a review for most of you. Hopefully we're able to get through it in a reasonable amount of time. We're going to be using these verbs again because when it comes to health and healing and taking care of oneself, a lot of these are things that we do for ourselves. A lot of things, that we do to keep ourselves healthy are things we do for ourselves or to ourselves. So therefore, this unit is going to require you to use a lot of reflexive verbs, and we'll also be discussing a bit of daily routines and what our daily routines can do to help us, of course, stay healthy or not so much. So let's get started. So the first thing to make sure you know is how to recognize a reflexive verb. What is it and how do you know when you see one? So the biggest hint is you'll see a reflexive pronoun attached to the end of the infinitive. So remember, the infinitive is the form of the verb that ends with AR, ER, or IR, that regular unconjugated form. And the reflexive pronoun that you will see is se. Se is the most generic one. It can mean multiple things. But you'll notice that every single infinitive that I give you in these notes will have the letters se on the end. And the goal is to teach you how to start to work with these more comfortably. There will be tips for breaking things down. If you need to break things down, by all means do so. And if you don't need to break things down, of course, it's absolutely fine as well. Okay? Now, the big thing to keep in mind as well is that we use reflexive verbs, as I said earlier, to talk about things that we do to or for ourselves. And so we'll be going over this a little bit as well. We're going to start off with reflexives in the present, and then we're going to review a bit with the preterite and the imperfect. We'll go also over how you can use reflexive verbs in the present perfect and also the present progressive. So hopefully these end up being a good resource for you. So the first thing to do here, and on this slide, it's pasos uno y dos, the first two steps, okay, is to figure out how to conjugate a reflexive verb. And the way I do this is I do walk you through it step by step by step. For some of you, this will be beneficial. And as I mentioned earlier, some of you won't need this. But we're using mejorarse, which means to get better or to improve oneself, as our sample verb. Now, the first thing I always advise people to do is drop the letter se from the end of the verb. So my advice to you when you're conjugating reflexive verbs would be quite simply at the start, X out the se, draw a line through it, etc. Something along those lines so that you are not mistakenly adding it on when you're working with these, okay? But you drop the letters se or se, and then you just conjugate the verb in the present tense. Mejorar is a regular AR verb without the reflexive pronoun. It means to improve just on its own. Mejorarse means to improve oneself, or as I said earlier, to get better. You just conjugate the verb. Step 2, paso dos, mejoro. Tú mejoras, usted mejora, nosotros mejoramos, vosotros mejoráis, and ellos, ustedes mejoran. For step 3 here with los pronombres reflexivos, it's really important to know that there is a reflexive pronoun that matches up with each verb conjugation. So it's important for you to have this as a reference to write down the reflexive pronouns and their meanings in the boxes below. So in order to say myself, me, yourself, te, himself, herself, or yourself, se, ourselves is nos, yourselves en España is os, and themselves or yourselves is se. So our reflexive pronouns are me, te, se, nos, os, se. Now, if you're on Página 2, step 4 is to put it all together. And so what you're going to do is you are going to take the reflexive pronouns and the verb conjugations and just kind of match them up. So me, mejoro, I get better. Myself, you are the only person getting better there. See? Te mejoras, se mejora, nos mejoramos, os mejoráis, and se mejoran. So now what you should do, pausar el video, pause the video, Conjugate the verb resbalarse, to trip, to slip, something some of you see Senora do on a regular basis when it comes to backpacks or her own 2 feet. And then once you're set with that, call me over to take a quick look and make sure that you're on the right track. Once you're done with that, and I've okayed your conjugation, move on, please. Now, we've worked with discussing things in the present, like what someone's doing right now in the moment. We've also worked with a few past tenses, the preterite, the imperfect, and the present perfect. So we are going to go over these a little bit as well. For el pretérito y el imperfecto, you follow the same rules that you follow for the present tense, hopefully fairly straightforward. So you just want to conjugate the verb in the appropriate tense. So instead of conjugating things in the present, you conjugate in the preterite or the imperfect. So our sample verb here is torcerse, to twist. So if you twist your ankle, me tuerzo el tobillo, I twist my ankle. In el pretérito, we have me torcí, te torciste, se torció, nos torcimos, os torcistes, and se torcieron. In el imperfecto, we have me torcía, te torcías, se torcía, nos torcíamos, os torcíais, and se torcían. Moving on to the first of our 2 compound verb tenses, we have el presente perfecto. So you're going to want your present perfect notes for this, potentially depending on your level of comfort with the present perfect. You want to follow the formula for el presente perfecto, which is the conjugation of haber in the present, so has, ha, hemos, habéis, han, plus a past participle. So those are the forms that end with ado or ido. When it comes to el presente perfecto, there's only one way to conjugate these. The reflexive pronoun must go before the conjugation of haber. Absolutely has to. So for desmayarse, this is our sample here, to faint. We have me he desmayado, I have fainted. Te has desmayado, you have fainted. Se ha desmayado, he or she has fainted, or you formal have fainted. Nos hemos desmayado, we have fainted. That would be a few too many people. I hope that hasn't happened. Nos habéis desmayado, you all have fainted in Spain. And se han desmayado, they have fainted, or you all have fainted. For el presente progresivo, the present progressive, so to talk about things that are going on right now, you have 2 options. They are equally correct, and I would advise you to use the one with which you're most comfortable. The second one, the one on the right-hand side of the column, is more common. However, the one, the option where you put the reflexive pronoun before the conjugation of a star, is equally correct. So use the one that's going to work best for you. So you've got the 2 options here: before the conjugation of a star, or attached to the end of the present participle, which requires adding an accent over the letter a of ando or the letter e of yendo. And so you'll see the example here. What we have for examples are recuperarse, it means to recuperate. So antes de estar, before estar, me estoy recuperando, I am recuperating. Te estás recuperando, you are recuperating. Se está recuperando, he or she is recuperating, or you formal are recuperating. Nos estamos recuperando, we are recuperating. Os estáis recuperando, you all are recuperating. Or se están recuperando, they or you all are recuperating. And of course, the options on the right-hand side, al final del participio, at the end of the participle, have the exact same meanings. So I'm not going to go over the translations again, but we have estoy recuperándome, estás recuperándote, está recuperándose, estamos recuperándonos, estáis recuperándoos, and están recuperándose. Now that you're done, go on to the next activities, and please call me over if you have questions.